Most powerful country in the history of the world. Most powerful is a subjective opinion. Would you agree with Biden's statement on 60 Minutes that the U.S. is the most powerful country in history of the world? And if not, what would it be? Background: my wife and I had quite the debate about this tonight. And we had opposing opinions. Without stating the basis of either of our arguments, I would like to see what other people have to say. In and out of the U.S. Some of our talking points were: would Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the Russian Empire, the USSR, the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg dynasty for examples, or even Nazi Germany, etc., be in the argument? Or by in the history of the world do you mean the most powerful for its time? Or the most powerful compared to all of history? How do you define and quantify power? Highest GDP, biggest military strength, self-sufficiency in natural resources, global reserve currency, diplomatic alliances, center of the internet, dominance in technology for business, dominance in medical pharma. I guess I could continue. Any somewhat powerful 21st century state would crush all of the powerful states of the past, due to advances in technology. In addition, the quality of life of the average citizen in modern states is significantly greater than that of these older regimes, also due to advances in technology. The U.S. can easily afford two simultaneous wars across the Atlantic. There is a reason the military-industrial complex consistently wins in America among its lawmakers. Despite the kickbacks and donations, it has allowed immense power projection. And most military aid from America doesn't go to Kiev or Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, but places like Dallas, where all Mike Company's headquarters are. Yes. There is nothing ever conceived by ancients like an over-the-horizon war. With our Navy and Air Force we can project power anywhere on Earth. As long as the ground does not need occupying or invasion troops like Iraq and Afghanistan required. For decades, we can honestly say our newest energy weapons are godlike. The U.S. Navy deploys Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines. Each is capable of carrying up to 20 Trident II ICBMs. Each missile carries up to 12 independently targetable Mk5 nuclear warheads. Each warhead is up to 575 kilotons of destructive power, 32 times the force of the Hiroshima bomb. That's the equivalent of nearly 8,000 Hiroshima bombs per submarine. It's the closest thing humanity has to a Death Star. And the U.S. has 14 of them. These submarines circle the globe submerged and hidden for months at a time, just waiting for the order to unleash unimaginable destruction. We're the most powerful country ever. In absolute terms, it's the USA. If you mean amount of economic, military and cultural dominance relative to other powerful countries in its time, then I'd go with the British Empire. Yeah, the U.S. is the most powerful empire in known human history. USA brought us the nuclear bomb and no civilians even know how advanced their tech is. If we're going with power relative to its time, then I believe the British Empire ruled over something like 1/4 of the Earth's population. That seems difficult to beat. The United States rules over only a 24th or so of the Earth's population. Yes, the U.S. has influence outside of the portion of humanity it directly controls. But so did the British Empire. Deployment capabilities aside, the U.S. does have something unique: the nuclear triad. We live in the only time in human history where we have the capability to destroy human civilization. No other empire save for the USSR possessed that ability, no matter how hard they tried. So even though the U.S. can deploy troops to any part of the world within 24 hours, Even though the US has more aircraft carriers than any of its peers. Even though the US has bilateral and multilateral treaties with dozens of countries across the world. I think that the simple fact it has that arsenal makes it easily the most powerful country to ever exist. In absolute terms, yes. In relative terms, the Egyptian, Roman, Mongol and Aztec empires would like a word. Bring an army with jets, tanks and machine guns and they could easily defeat the Mongols, the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, the British, the Habsburgs, etc. The only country that you could argue might be able to beat them is the USSR. Just because they had more nukes than America does now. It is the most powerful in history. But I don't think it's fair to compare it with older empires since the technology is not the same at all. I think a fair comparison would be to compare the gap of power between the considered most powerful country of the time and other countries of their timeline. And compare the differences, then we would determine the best in history. Every single army you listed could be left in smithereens by an air campaign. Even the Nazis. Not subjective. Hard to disagree with. Now, if he'd said most powerful relative to all other countries, I wouldn't know the answer to that. But most powerful? Sure. Depends how you define power. If based on standard IR superpower measure, then the US is the most powerful state ever. If the definition includes a greater economic focus or the world being defined differently, then maybe China took that spot long ago. What is the standard? If it's modern day, then you can't count Rome etc. because their military might would be ancient. What are we comparing ourselves to, the Visigoths, and adjusting for inflation? Most powerful because huge econ system plus projection of influence and power is massive compared to other countries now. British Empire had huge influence and maneuvering ability as well, but they were smaller in scope. Obviously, as communication was slow plus the number elements at play was low as well. Systems were less complicated. Genghis could not influence events in South America. Nazi Germany mostly never touched places ending in Stan. Alexander the Great wasn't even aware that there was an entire other half of the world to conquer. Nor did he extend the deeply into Africa. The United States, as it currently operates, can, if it so chooses, engage in military operations worldwide. There hasn't been a decision in South America in 150 years or more that the US didn't have a hand in. Even other powerful nations and alliances have to take American desires into account. If you disagree with that, explain to me why Taiwan has been invaded by mainland China. It absolutely is the most powerful country in history. It combines the aspects that made previous hegemonies powerful and leads the most powerful military alliance in world history as well. The USA has the means to destroy a very high of the nations of the world over the course of 1 week. Yeah, I'd say that it is the most powerful country to ever have existed. Is the US? People who think otherwise are kidding themselves. The strongest military the world has ever seen for hard power. For soft power has diplomatic ties everywhere. Access to one of the biggest pool of population that is not on decline. Said population has at least one of the best in any field. And of course has most the world wrapped into the dollar.